my precious ones, come a little closer. Nana Rose has a very special story for you today. Have you ever heard of Willow Creek? It's this tiny little town tucked away in the mountains, looks like something out of a fairy tale but hiding a secret so dark, most folks are too scared to even ask about it. Right at the heart of that place, there's a tale of strange explosions, people vanishing without a trace, and believe it or not an unlikely hero who changed everything. But what really happened in Willow Creek? Who or what was behind it all? And the most chilling question of all, is the danger still lurking in those mountains? Today, we're going to uncover every twist and turn in this fascinating story. So get comfy, my darlings, because what you're about to hear might just keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. And before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and tap that little bell, because here, every story is a heartwarming and sometimes mysterious adventure you won't want to miss.
Followed its tranquil rhythm, until the calm was interrupted by a deafening roar. In the heart of this community, we meet Sarah, a young paramedic with an indomitable spirit and a look that radiated compassion. Her life, dedicated to saving lives, was about to change drastically. Beside her, her brother, John, a former soldier with scars that went beyond the skin, fought against the ghosts of a painful past in the war. His recent return home did not bring the peace he so desperately sought, but placed him at a crossroads where his training and courage would be tested. They were the balance, the strength and the compassion, united by an unbreakable fraternal bond. But Willow Creek was not just a picturesque town. Beneath the calm surface, dark secrets hid, and the tranquility was just a facade. A series of inexplicable events began to disturb the town's routine, and a dark premonition hung in the air, foreshadowing a storm that would go beyond nature. The lives of Sarah and John, and everyone in Willow Creek, were about to be turned upside down. What they didn't know was that the truth was hidden in a web of lies and conspiracies, and that fate had chosen them to unravel the mystery that threatened their town. The silence of Willow Creek was about to be broken by cries for help and the struggle for survival. The adventure they were about to face would test their limits and take them to places they had never imagined. Willow Creek, nestled in the valley between the mountains, was a community where everyone knew each other. The wooden houses with flowered balconies reflected the simplicity of local life, where time seemed to have its own rhythm. The river that snaked through the town was the soul of the community, a source of life and a meeting point on sunny days. But the beauty of the place hid dark secrets. Sarah, 28, was the town's paramedic, known for her dedication and courage. Her father, a respected doctor, had taught her the value of life and the importance of helping others. Her passion for medicine was her guide, and she felt responsible for everyone in Willow Creek. She was the personification of kindness and hope. John, 2 years older, was a former soldier who had returned home after years of service. The scars of war tormented him, and he struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder. His relationship with Sarah was one of love and protection, and he felt guilty for not being there when she needed him most. He was a man of action, but also carried a sensitive heart. The dynamic between Sarah and John was complex. Despite their differences, their fraternal bond was strong and unbreakable. Sarah always saw the best in John, while he protected her with all his strength. Together, they formed a perfect team, a balance between reason and emotion. But they didn't know that fate had chosen them to face a threat that would go beyond their fears and traumas. The routine of Willow Creek was shaken by a series of strange events. Animals acting unusually, mysterious equipment found in the forest, and a feeling that something was wrong. The weather, once mild, became unstable, and tension began to settle in the town. The peace of Willow Creek was about to be broken, and Sarah and John were at the center of this storm. The calm of Willow Creek vanished when an inexplicable storm isolated the town. Sarah and John, amidst the chaos, discovered that the strange events were no coincidence. A secret laboratory in the mountains revealed sinister experiments, and the truth began to emerge. Someone was using the town as a guinea pig. Trust in their neighbors was shaken, and the struggle for survival mingled with the search for truth. A family secret, linked to John's past, came to light, directly connecting him to the experiments and placing him at a moral crossroads that would test his limits. The danger became increasingly real, turning Willow Creek into a battlefield. With the discovery of the secret laboratory, Sarah and John defined their objectives: to expose the truth and protect their town. The first obstacle was the lack of communication with the outside world, which isolated them and left them vulnerable. They needed to find a way to call for help and warn about the sinister experiments. The tension between them increased as the decisions became more difficult. The search for answers led them to an old map hidden in their grandfather's house, which revealed secret passages in the mountains. This discovery brought them into contact with a group of residents who also suspected what was happening. Among them was Emily, a teacher who had always been a voice of reason in the town, and who now became a valuable ally. Meanwhile, a stranger had arrived in town, a mysterious man named Daniel, who seemed to know more than he revealed. His presence caused distrust in John, who saw him as a threat, but Sarah felt that he could be a key piece in unraveling the mystery. This difference of opinion tested the relationship between the siblings. The dynamic between Sarah and John deepened as they faced the challenges together. The trust and love they felt for each other were their greatest strength, but also their greatest weakness. They needed to learn to trust each other and overcome their differences to achieve their goals. The road ahead was uncertain, but they were determined to fight against all odds. The first steps in the investigation revealed that the laboratory was just the tip of the iceberg. A larger conspiracy was at play, and the lives of everyone in Willow Creek were in danger. Sarah and John knew that the fight would be difficult, but they were willing to risk everything to protect their town and their loved ones. The night in Willow Creek was dense, the silence broken only by the sound of leaves on the trees. Suddenly, a roar echoed through the mountains, followed by a flash that lit up the sky. One of the houses in the town, Emily's, had exploded, throwing debris everywhere. The attack, deliberate and brutal, marked the beginning of a new phase in the struggle for survival. The incident shook everyone, but awakened in Sarah and John a relentless fury. The feeling of security had vanished, and the urgency to act became palpable. They knew they could no longer hide, and that the fight for the truth had become a fight for their own lives. The explosion of Emily's house was the turning point that would change everything. From that moment on, the priority was to rescue the survivors and find those responsible for the attack. Sarah, with her experience as a paramedic, led the rescue, while John, with his military training, coordinated the defense of the town. They were determined not to allow more people to be hurt. The attack also revealed that the laboratory was not the only place of experimentation. There were other hideouts in the town, and the conspirators were moving freely, regardless of the consequences. The feeling of vulnerability increased every minute, and the fight became increasingly difficult. The explosion of Emily's house was not just an attack, but a call to action. Sarah and John knew they could no longer wait. They needed to unite, trust each other, and fight against all odds. The fate of the small town was in their hands, and they were willing to risk everything to protect it. The explosion of Emily's house left a trail of destruction and fear in Willow Creek. The survivors, shaken, came together to try to rebuild their lives, but the threat of the conspirators loomed over everyone. The need to find a safe place to hide became urgent, and the search for refuge led them to an old abandoned mine in the mountains. While exploring the mine, Sarah and John found an old diary, which revealed the story of a scientist who had worked on similar experiments in the past. The diary mentioned an antidote to the effects of the experiments, but the location was unknown. This discovery rekindled hope, but also created a new race against time. The situation was complicated by the arrival of a group of mercenaries, led by a ruthless man named Marcus, who had been hired by the conspirators to eliminate the resistance. The struggle for survival became even more difficult, and Sarah and John needed to find a way to protect their community. Meanwhile, the relationship between Sarah and Daniel deepened, and the trust between them grew. Daniel revealed that he was a former government agent who had investigated the conspirators in the past, and that he had been forced to hide. He became a valuable ally, offering information and help in the fight against evil. The dynamic between Sarah and John was tested by a new conflict. John felt guilty for not being able to protect Emily, and the pressure consumed him. Sarah tried to calm him down, but the tension between them was growing. They needed to learn to deal with their pains and fears to overcome the challenges ahead. The struggle for survival became a struggle for the truth, and Sarah and John were willing to risk everything to protect their town and their loved ones. The road ahead was uncertain, but they were determined to fight against all odds. Hope was the only weapon they had. The search for the antidote became the priority, and Sarah, John, and Daniel followed the clues in the diary, arriving at an old abandoned laboratory deep in the forest. There, they found more information about the experiments and the identity of the scientist who had created them. The truth about John's past was revealed, directly linking him to the experiments. Meanwhile, the mercenaries led by Marcus intensified their attacks, surrounding the mine and preventing the survivors from escaping. The tension among the town's residents increased, and hope dwindled with each passing day. The struggle for survival became increasingly difficult, and the need to make difficult decisions became urgent. Daniel had a dark past and was being pursued by his former allies. The trust between him and Sarah grew, but the shadow of his past loomed over them. The situation was complicated when the mercenaries managed to invade the mine, putting everyone in danger. The struggle for survival became a desperate battle, and with each moment, lives were lost. Hope seemed to fade, but Sarah and John refused to give up. The search for the antidote and the fight against the mercenaries became a race against time. Sarah, John, and Daniel needed to find a way to protect their community and expose the truth before it was too late. The invasion of the mine by the mercenaries marked a turning point in the story. Sarah, John, and Daniel found themselves cornered, with little chance of escape. Amidst the chaos, John had an idea. He realized that the antidote was not a physical substance, but rather a way to neutralize the effects of the experiments. He remembered an old legend from his grandfather, which spoke of the strength of unity and hope. He understood that the true weapon was the determination to fight against evil. Sarah, inspired by John's courage, made a risky decision. She offered herself as bait to lure the mercenaries away from the mine, giving time for the others to escape. The decision was dangerous, but she was willing to risk everything to protect her community. Daniel, moved by his past and his growing connection with Sarah, joined the fight. He revealed his skills as a former agent, leading the resistance and guiding the survivors through the secret passages of the mine. The situation was complicated when Marcus, the leader of the mercenaries, managed to capture Sarah. John, consumed by guilt and anger, found himself at a crossroads. He needed to choose between saving his sister or protecting his community. The decision was difficult, but he knew he couldn't fail. The struggle for survival became increasingly intense. Sarah, John, and Daniel were willing to risk everything to protect their town and their loved ones. Hope was the only weapon they had, and they were determined to fight against all odds. With Sarah captured, John and Daniel knew they needed to act quickly. They gathered the survivors, devising a plan to rescue her and expose the truth about the experiments. The fight for freedom became a final battle, and they were willing to risk everything. Meanwhile, Marcus, the leader of the mercenaries, tortured Sarah, trying to get information about the antidote. But she refused to give in, maintaining her courage and determination. She knew that John and Daniel were on their way, and that hope had not been lost. The search for Sarah led John and Daniel to an old underground tunnel, which connected the mine to the conspirators' main laboratory. There, they found more information about the experiments and the true purpose behind them. The truth was even darker than they imagined. Meanwhile, the relationship between John and Daniel deepened, and the trust between them grew. They became allies, united by the fight against evil and by their love for Sarah. They were willing to risk everything to save her and protect their community. The tension increased every moment. Sarah, John, and Daniel were ready to face the enemy, determined not to surrender. Hope was the only weapon they had, and they were willing to fight against all odds. John and Daniel, guided by a map found in the tunnel, arrived at the main laboratory, where Sarah was being held prisoner. The final battle was about to begin, and the tension was high. They knew they needed to be quick and precise to rescue her and expose the truth. Meanwhile, Sarah, even tortured, refused to give in. She knew that hope was the only weapon she had, and that John and Daniel were on their way. She used her intelligence to plant clues and confuse her captors, buying time for the rescue. The final battle began with an explosion that shook the laboratory. John and Daniel, with the help of the survivors, invaded the place, facing the mercenaries in a desperate battle. The fight was intense, and with each moment, lives were lost. The situation escalated when Marcus, the mercenary leader, managed to capture Daniel, putting John in a difficult position. He had to choose between saving his friend or his sister. The decision was tough, but he knew he couldn't fail. In the heart of the lab, John faced Marcus in a brutal fight. With each blow, the tension increased, and the hope of victory seemed to fade. But John, driven by his love for Sarah and his determination to protect his community, found the strength to fight against all odds. Meanwhile, Sarah, with Daniel's help, managed to break free and join the fight. She used her intelligence and courage to disable the lab's security system, exposing the truth about the experiments to the world. Justice was about to be served. The final battle culminated in a decisive confrontation between John and Marcus. In a moment of pure adrenaline, John managed to disarm Marcus, but in the instant of victory, he was shot. The pain of loss was unbearable, but John knew he had fulfilled his purpose. The fight against evil had been victorious, and hope was reborn in Willow Creek. The truth had been exposed, and justice had been served. The climax of the story had arrived, and the main conflicts had been resolved. The fight for survival had transformed into a fight for freedom. Hope had overcome fear, and love had triumphed over hate. Now, it's time for you to reflect on the story of Willow Creek. How would you use your courage to face the challenges in your own life? The dust of battle settled, and Willow Creek, though marked by the scars of the fight, was reborn from the ashes. The truth about the experiments was exposed, and the conspirators were brought to justice. The city, once held hostage by fear, now breathed freedom and hope. Sarah, heartbroken by the loss of John, found strength in her dedication to medicine and her responsibility to her community. She became the leader of Willow Creek, guiding its inhabitants with her wisdom and compassion. She honored John's memory by continuing to fight for a better world. Daniel, after the fight, decided to follow his own path, but he would always remember Willow Creek and his connection to Sarah. He had found redemption and a new purpose, and he was determined to use his skills to protect the innocent. The fight had changed his life forever. The story of Willow Creek became a legend, passed down from generation to generation. The story of Sarah, John, and Daniel, the heroes who had faced adversity and won, inspired many people to fight for justice and truth. The small town, once isolated and forgotten, became a symbol of hope and resilience. The lesson that Willow Creek teaches us is that, even in the face of the greatest adversity, courage, unity, and hope can lead us to victory. Love is the most powerful force there is, and the truth will always prevail. Now, reflect on your own story. What legacy do you want to leave for the world? What kind of hero do you want to be? Use the story of Willow Creek as inspiration and find your own strength to fight against all odds.